talked about how the Lakehouse architecture is actually becoming the winning architecture in the world of AI and ML. Talk to us a little bit about that.
In terms of AI, it's all about the metadata. It's all about the meaning. The agent needs to know exactly where to go to get what. Lakehouse really supports that. From a data standpoint, yeah, definitely AI.
How did you approach it at Vanguard, and what were some of the biggest challenges on getting to the level of the right data validation, data quality, data reliability that you need to support your current business cases?
Vanguard has standards and Vanguard has criteria. We have regulation and compliance that we need to adhere to all the time. We took the low-hanging fruit. We started to go with the Pydantics as well for the validation right the way through our pipeline. And you've then got the Glue's data quality tool running your data quality checks, and then obviously storing the results of those data quality checks in your Lakehouse, which has been modeled. It was a challenge, but it was a win.
You mentioned earlier, beyond data quality governance, how do we think about efficiency? How do we think about performance?
There's how we think about it, and then there's how often do we think about it. We think about it every day. Performance is key. Before I build something, before I deliver something, let's make sure I've got my engineering excellence standards in place and that we're able to build on top of those. What am I talking about? Data quality, metadata management, my observability. Performance, we absolutely need it because in the cloud world, performance has a direct impact on cost.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of Data Innovators. Today I'm very happy to be speaking to Ime Akpan, the head of data engineering at Vanguard. Ime, thanks for chatting with me today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, you're based in London, so I know it's toward the end of the day for you, almost end of the week. So we'll make it short, and hopefully we can all go to a happy hour and enjoy start to enjoy our weekend. But maybe kind of to kick us off, would love to hear about where you are today. If you can share a little bit more about your role in the team in the Vanguard, what do you guys do, and how does it fit in the broader organization?
Yeah, so at Vanguard, my team, our data engineering team, at least, we're part of a regional or our global chief data and analytics office. And so I'm within the UK and European data analytics office. So our data engineering team, if you think about it, what is data engineering, right? We're responsible for acquiring or collecting data from multiple data sources, whether they be from upstream data engineering teams across region, whether they be direct integrations with third-party vendors, data providers, service providers. Our job is to collect it, do the typical cleaning and transformation, basically making it look good first and foremost, obviously checking it. So the quality checks, the validation, the standard practices as part of the typical data engineering lifecycle. And then most importantly, making sure it's appropriate for each different type of downstream consumer, whether they be your scientist, your analyst. So that's the obvious responsibility that we have, and we take that one on with pride. But there are other, you could say, unknown, or not so much unknown, but the unspoken agreement, right? The expectation. So we're also responsible for educating and really pushing the data literacy around the organization.
Important.
Very important for our business stakeholders as well, right? Whether it just be standardizing terminology and taxonomy, but also keeping the business aware of upcoming trends, of industry standards, because we're a highly regulated firm. So there's things like that. And then we're also AI ambassadors, right? So everyone's talking about AI. And we've gone past the stage now where we're just trying to collect use cases. We've got use cases for days now. So it's more about, okay, getting the adoption rate at the level we want it to be, making sure we've got the right intake and governance processes around that, and also making sure the data foundations are set so that we are actually ready for AI.
So it makes a lot of sense. And obviously in a big financial services organization, like I'm sure there's a lot on the plate. So, we just kicked off 2026 very recently. As you think about the year, what are your biggest priority for the team?
There were quite a few, but the biggest priority for this year really obviously comes from the business as the business vision and mission, which is always to keep pushing out true value to our clients. And so how do we have that value proposition propagate down back inward So it starts in terms of us making sure the foundations are not just set, but are easily updated and extended with market shifts and changes and with industry changes. So making sure that not only are we AI ready from a data standpoint, but that our colleagues and business partners are also AI ready. Classic example, integrations were always done via APIs, right? But we're now transitioning not away from APIs, but MCP servers. So it's our job to make sure we work with our business partners so that as we progress in our AI data readiness, are you also AI ready in terms of application integration? Uh, so that's a big one for us this year, as well as continuously modernizing our data lakehouse for our operational and analytical use cases.
Absolutely. So, kind of building on top of that, over the past year or so, I think you spoke publicly about a few very hot, I think, and important topics for you, for me, for our audience, around data modernization, around data foundation in the lakehouse, around AI readiness, and around overall operational excellence, I would say, in data engineering. So a lot to unpack here. We'd love to start. A lot of us to cover today, so we'll have to start unpacking. So, let's first focus on the first one. In the recent CDO panel, you talked about data modernization in financial services and kind of the shift from historic analytics to a much more intent-driven predictions. What does it mean for data engineering to support that shift, and what were some of the biggest obstacles to get there?
I think the biggest obstacle, not just from a data engineering standpoint, I think right throughout the organization was, again, the literacy, the understanding. Like, Ime, what were you talking about when you spoke about intent? And everything always stems from context, right? It's all well and good to understand what I have to do or what I'm going to do. It's all well and good to understand what the requirement is, but it only has true meaning when we understand why, right? So, for example, yeah, Ime, I need you to build a data pipeline and make the data available for our users. Sure, of course I can do that. But the more I understand about why I'm supposed to do it, changes my entire approach.
Mhm.
And this can be said for anything in life, any type of software engineering, but specifically data engineering, because the more I understand about how and why the data that I'm putting through is going to be used, the more I understand about the right technique to use, the right pattern I should use, the right approach, the right modeling, the right method, the right storage facility, the right type of retention that needs to be put in place based on the regulator. Um, and as we then look at observability, because again, over time, the whole concept of observability is changing. It allows me to ask different types of questions as to how what should be monitored and checked, therefore, how the pipeline itself is implemented and maintained. Um, and because a lot of our downstream consumers are analysts, for us as a company, if we can understand what the intention was and what the intention is on the data that we've received. What do I mean? Well, somebody obviously did something somewhere at a certain point in time that generated this data record that I've pulled through a pipeline. The more we can understand about what this customer intended to do, that then allows us to go from reactive to being proactive. We can actually, I wouldn't say predict, but we could pretty much project what they intended to do so we could meet them halfway. So you then get to a point where I'm now building something and I'm going to prepare something for you because I know in a minute you're going to want to do something.
Yeah. So sound like, in the world of predictive analytics, of course, AI, context is king, and context comes from user context, the very upstream, and all the way down to semantics and data context on the analytics side, and all the way down to engineering context on the engineering layer. Absolutely, I think we see that as well across the board today, and it's getting very hard to get the right context at the right time.
Because context is king. If it was easy, who knows where we would be today, right? I love the word context because these concepts and these words have had their meaning from the beginning of time. But due to, I guess, technology shifts, these things, these words take on a whole new meaning, right? So semantic layers, semantic modeling, there's nothing new. It's a standard practice. But as we moved from, I guess, back in the day, from traditional database design and data warehousing to the cloud, and then we had schemaless systems for some reason, because we could go faster, quicker, we forgot about data modeling. Oh, but now because of AI, oh, semantics, context, right? You know, um, everything comes down to context. So now that we're building these agents, as an example, we understand that context engineering is now a thing. So we focus a lot on context based on what we are looking to build and deliver. But why don't we also consider the context from our customer side as to why they're interacting with us as well? So that's kind of where I was going with that. I always try to have my teams consider that too.
And you started alluding to, I think you started mentioning the shift, from the traditional database engineering to cloud data warehouse, and where we're going next, which actually gets me to my second topic of the day, which is the data foundation that you talked about at the big data and AI tech show in London very recently. Um, Talked about how the Lakehouse architecture is actually becoming the winning architecture in the world of AI and ML. Talk to us a little bit about that. Let's try to unpack it.
It's becoming clearer, um, not just to technical teams now, but to our senior stakeholders, because they've understood where the world is going regarding AI. And so it's actually quite interesting, because businesses, when they're looking at strategy and vision, value tends to come up a lot, and value tends to drive the priority. And so when it comes down to what we're going to build and what we're going to focus on this year, as long as it's got a certain value attached to it, that's what gets prioritized. So I'll forget the AI piece for a second. So as a data engineer, as a passionate data engineer, wanting to make sure that the foundations are set at the very beginning, if possible. You try to buy as much time, don't you? Before I build something, before I deliver something, let's make sure I've got my engineering excellence standards in place and that we're able to build on top of those. What am I talking about? Data quality, metadata management, my observability. Let's make sure I've actually modeled this system properly, so that when the requirements and the use cases come through, well, it's semantic. Everybody understands the meaning because there's one meaning. But then here's the challenge. How do you communicate the value of that to a senior stakeholder that's got a totally different priority? So those initiatives tend to get pushed back a little bit. Okay, Ime, yeah, we'll get to that. Just build these dashboards, or give my analyst the ability to build me these dashboards, and then do that modeling foundation stuff later. So that was the challenge from the technologists. Now today that's switched, because the business are like, okay, well, we need AI today. So is our data AI ready, Ime? And I'm like, oh, you mean those foundations I was talking to you about? But absolutely, in terms of AI, it's all about the metadata. It's all about the meaning. So if me as a person, I'm working with an AI system, more time than not, I'm going to be using natural language via my prompt with the right context. And the agent needs to know exactly where to go to get what. So with that semantic layer built on top of that foundation in place, from a data standpoint, you're definitely AI ready. Because now you, as a technologist, a marketing leader, a finance analyst, a senior stakeholder, and the AI agent, we're all referring to the same thing with the same understanding and the same meaning. Meaning, semantics, meaning. Lakehouse really supports that. And one of the things that we were able to do was make sure we started slowly, continuously educating the business. So when it came down to things like build or buy, which is something that one should always consider, we were able to convince enough stakeholders to give us a little bit of time. Don't spend any money just yet. There are table formats, there's technology that we already have access to that with some small tweaks, Apache Iceberg being the example, as the underlying building block, that made us more than just AI ready. It also protected us as a firm because of the built-in benefits, like the built-in audit logs. So as you know, we can time travel and roll back to yesterday's version of the data based on something. So that was big for us. And what it did for the company as a whole was it gave us more confidence that actually we were more AI ready than we thought we were, which is fantastic. So it was a bit more of a light touch to then move away from the AI ready data initiative and start looking at the teams that we integrate with via their applications to ask the question, okay, are you AI ready? So what do I mean? I don't know. Jira, Confluence, these tools that we typically use in the workplace. Well, everybody wants to build an AI agent. Now, your agent is perfectly capable now of interrogating the data because that's modeled properly. But can the agent now interrogate these separate applications? One could say, yeah, sure, use the API. But when it comes to AI, it's about MCP servers. So for me, what I'm really saying there is if an organization is going to be truly AI ready, it's AI data readiness as your foundation. And then the supporting applications need to all be singing from the same hymn sheet so that you've got that one universal way of two-way communication.
From an architecture perspective, you mentioned obviously Iceberg is one of the building blocks. Like, what are the key components in this Lakehouse architecture for you? For instance, in terms of obviously table format and storage. Where do you go in terms of compute engine and kind of the next level of applications?
So we work a lot with AWS, right? So from my data engineering team, they're predominantly AWS. So we have to look at things like performance and we have to look at things like cost as well. So one of the things my team brought to my attention in terms of cost and efficiency, they said, okay, let's go serverless. So let's use the AWS serverless stack. So instead of maybe EMR or EC2 clusters, let's go Glue for our compute. It's distributed, as I'm sure you know. It allows us to take full advantage of the Apache Spark and with the PySpark element, which nicely plays ball with Apache Iceberg. So that was slightly what I meant when I said it was a slight or a light touch. It wasn't a heavy shift. So AWS Lambda for the smaller loads, moving files from here to there. But Glue, that's our go-to and has been our go-to for a long time, especially because of the other integrations that AWS has made available straight from Glue. So the Glue catalog. So the automatic metadata management, all done from within our Glue jobs running Apache. Because we've got the catalog, so we've got the descriptions, so we've got data types, and we've got every type of technical metadata automatically available and updated with every deployment if there's a change needed. So that was massive for us in terms of that. So that's what we use for compute. For orchestration, AWS step functions. Again, I don't really need to explain too much about why orchestration is important, but those were key components. So Iceberg is your table format, S3 is the storage, Glue for the compute, and then we start to build out and design from there.
And you talked also about building versus buying. You can think about it from a platform perspective. You can think about it from a tooling perspective, from an application perspective. As a head of an engineering organization that needs, on the one hand, to deliver business value and need to deliver capabilities to the business, and on the other hand, be responsible for their own organization and their own tooling. How do you think about build versus buy?
It's a constant thought, and it's very important. Depending on where you are on your journey, I think that's how and where decisions become more important. Yeah, it's easy to buy and then integrate and take the time to do so. But okay, you can buy a software, you can buy a product or a tool, but that is still going to need something that you've already got in place. It's still going to need to integrate and interrogate your data. And based on the state of your data, the tool's only going to be as good as the data that you've got. So in terms of build or buy, we evaluate vendors all the time. And part of the decision-making process isn't just about which vendor is the best when it comes to performance, when it comes to what they're offering, but which one is the best as it relates to our current state. Can it support our current state and our future state? And what's the cost in terms of the effort there as well? So yeah, you've got your Databricks and your Snowflakes and your Dremios, and they're all great. And, we have been and will constantly evaluate all of them. And we do that for any application that we bring on board within the ecosystem. And thankfully, we work very closely with one of our CTO. CTO is our Chief Technical Office. So they tend to drive a lot of those conversations. They've got the capacity and, well, yeah, they've got the capacity to take those conversations further, but they bring us along on the journey because they look at us as the data experts and thought leaders and front runners. So it's something that we think about a lot and is very important. I think what we were able to do last year was we were able to show Vanguard before you go and before you go and buy another data-oriented product, let us go to stage 2 with the data foundation, because that might determine which product you look to buy.
Yeah, and I would assume that in this day and age, with more business use cases and more AI workloads that you need to support, it's also a matter of what can accelerate me to get to the roadmap and what is actually core versus mission critical but not core. And I think there is also like understanding the business use case for Vanguard, translating that to data engineering work. Obviously, that's the core. That's the uh, where the differentiation, where the uniqueness, where the added domain expertise is coming to life. And of course, then there are always the peripheries and stuff that can help us accelerate. Always a good prioritization problem to have. Um, just one more topic again that you talked about in the sense of data foundation. You talked a lot of, you just mentioned this a few minutes ago, around data quality. Um, of course, again, feeding into the AI readiness discussion. And how did you approach it at Vanguard, and what were some of the biggest challenges on getting to the level of the right data validation, data quality, data reliability that you need to support your current business cases?
For me, I'd say there were 2 types of challenges. Um, challenges slash considerations. There were the tools that are readily available as developers, right? So for example, we use Python a lot, right? So one would say, one of my engineers said, hey, let's go out and let's use Great Expectations as a tool, right? A package that we could run. Um, someone else was like, yep, let's go with Pydantic. It's Python's most popular validation package out there. And, there are many types of those packages that allow us to programmatically apply data quality. So there was that to consider. And then we had an even bigger consideration. And this more came down from governance, because again, we're a highly regulated organization. So we have to factor in things like PII. We have to factor in, the privacy. And if we're going to consider the build or buy, what's the framework? How does what we choose to use fit into our data governance and data quality framework, which is driven by the organization? So Vanguard has standards and Vanguard has criteria. We have regulation and compliance that we need to adhere to all the time. So it makes the conversation go a bit further when we have those standards, and then choosing, if we're going to buy something, it has to also align with this criteria. So we took the low-hanging fruit. So yes, we started to go with the Pydantics of this world for the validation right the way through our pipeline. And thankfully, as I mentioned, AWS with Glue, they they they've been evolving their data quality tool within Glue that we can actually programmatically use with their API. So imagine this now: you've got Pydantic validating your data, which is fantastic. And this is all done within Glue. At the same time, you've then got the Glue's data quality tool running your data quality checks, and then obviously storing the results of those data quality checks in your Lakehouse, which has been modeled. So then you've got your automatic data quality dashboards that that our data governance had defined. So that was, again, it was a challenge, but it was a win. And that was just from build. Seeing what we were able to achieve with that actually I wouldn't say it changed, but it kind of gave the business a view on, okay, we don't need to buy that, but if we are going to buy something, it needs to support this as well. So that was great. And what was, I think, the biggest win in that was that it was quick. It was easy to do. We didn't have to go learn a new language. We didn't have to go and learn anything special. For us, it was just another set of Python packages to implement. So we were able to plug them in. But there was an approach that we had to take. We had to make sure that everything that we did followed good design principles so that if we had to change something one day, it was easy to swap something out in one place. So yeah.
Love hearing the win, and how you leverage the stack, right, and what you can build natively. Again, always good to see some engineering wins on the board, especially when they drive true business value. Um, and of course, as you mentioned, it's always a journey, right? There's always the first step, and then there's like, how do you take what we build, but then automate it, become more proactive, become uh, uh, you know, do it at scale in a very principled way, and uh, always evolution, right, with everything that we do. The other piece, the other element here, I think, is, again, you touched on, is the operational excellence. You mentioned earlier, beyond data quality governance, how do we think about efficiency? How do we think about performance? Especially in a high, big environment, highly regulated industry. Um, how do you think about that?
There's how we think about it, and then there's how often do we think about it. We think about it every day. Performance is key. It's actually interesting. I was at an event a few years ago and it was an AI event, but I took the example and we could apply it to anything. It was like a triangle and they had performance as one edge on the triangle. Accuracy was another edge on the triangle. And I think speed was the other, right? And the message was, you can't go for all three. At best, you can take two. But when I think about it from a data engineering perspective, accuracy, that's a no-brainer. It's a non-negotiable, right? Performance, we absolutely need it because in the cloud world, performance has a direct impact on cost. A direct impact on cost. So the better performance, the lower your cost, especially when using serverless. And again, it has a relation on speed too. So if your systems are, I'd say, decoupled, if they're designed well, which is something that we constantly try to evolve, then our pipelines will run faster, hopefully continuously improving performance while ensuring that the data that we bring through is accurate, therefore trusted. Now, while I'm saying that with a smile on my face, and I'm saying it like, yeah, this is smooth and easy, it's not easy. It's not easy. Um, and I think the biggest challenge, or the main reason why I say it's not easy, every year we evolve our data engineering excellence. So we've actually started to version. It's funny. This is our data engineering excellence, version 4. Why do you keep adding versions? Oh, because we didn't consider this. We added metadata management in one previous version. In another version, we've added standardization. In another version, we've added open telemetry. In another version, it's a constantly evolving problem. Therefore, we need to evolve the solutions. And, does it make me scratch my head at night? Absolutely.
It's an interesting point, right? On accuracy is a non-negotiable, performance is key, and cost, that leaves the speed or velocity. And then the question is, well, how do you make do and make sure that you have the velocity, because you need to invest it again in business value. Um, Constant kind of struggle and chasing your tail in a sense. And yeah, and any tricks that you've learned throughout the years around that, or maybe version 5, version 6.
Stay close to your data architect and do your best to get an idea as to your CIO's objectives. The more we understand about our CIO's objectives, the closer I'll get with my architect, whose mission it is to make sure that's achieved. And they give me my blueprint as to the new patterns that we should follow, the approved Vanguard patterns. So my only trick would be to work very closely with the data architects, go to as many events as possible and speak to those who, in this respect, I would call them industry leaders. Because for me, we're talking about observability now, in my view. And funnily enough, just as we said, context is now is a context engineering thing that everyone's talking about. Well, about a year ago, I bought a book from the O'Reilly publishers. What was it called? Observability Engineering. So it's like there are disciplines within data. Data engineering is a discipline, and within the engineering, there are many more disciplines. So a trick is to understand what those disciplines are as well. Ingest them, digest them, understand them, share them, and constantly try to apply them while keeping your costs down if you can.
If you can.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
A small point, yeah. Um, we're coming up almost at time, so I want to make
Uh,
sure we just cover the last topic here. We talked about you had a talk at the Generative AI Summit, speaking about, again, AI readiness by design. Um, so again, when you think about it at scale, what does it actually means in terms of unlocking access to the curated, user-centric data products that allows us essentially to, again, maybe use the word democratize data AI?
an earlier part of our conversation, we spoke about literacy, data literacy. So the more effort you put into being an ambassador around the organization and making sure there's that good understanding, not just what data is, but what these terms and definitions are. What starts to happen over time is that your business colleagues will actually go out reading articles and coming back to you, understanding your pain, if you want to call it that. So now your audience is bigger, your team is now bigger. So the business teams, the technical teams are all one team, singing from the same hymn sheet. Right, now that we've got that in place, bringing it back to your question, how do we scale it? And what does it look like? Well, instead of trying to create a list of use cases, because that's what used to happen in the early days, we were just thinking of use cases and we were just creating a catalog of use cases. Well, the idea and the agreement was, let's stop thinking about use cases. Let's just understand what capabilities we need to have in place in order to implement use cases. What that gave us was a different way of thinking. It gave us a new priority as part of the AI readiness. So now what we've done is we've made sure that we've built in the capability to take on any use case. This may sound strange, but it all comes down to understanding why. We understand why. The why is, well, we want AI and we're going to run with AI and we need to trust it and it needs to scale. So understanding everything that we needed, and that involved everyone. So that involved architecture, that involved governance, that involved our security teams working together, understanding how we were going to implement the capability. We did that. And then we opened the floodgates. We said, okay, let's go. Use case, we got it. We implemented a really good intake, a Gen AI intake process as well. And this was something that was done globally, right? Because even though I'm CDAO, UK and Europe, we've got them globally. So again, we worked together. So we standardized how we take in Gen AI work. We standardized how we implemented our readiness, and that scaled because we all did it the same way. We worked very closely with AWS as well. We were very specific about the different types of models that we would use for certain cases. So we basically built a framework, and that so far has been going very well. On top of that as well, we made sure that we carved out an innovation hub, allowing for experimentation, because that allowed for different types of use cases to come through, knowing that we had the ability to implement.
Super important, the agility and kind of proving out things, again, how to move fast from POCs to production. And I think some of the biggest challenges today in our world is actually making those things work at scale. I think you need to iterate fast, and absolutely the agility plays a factor here. So, kind of summarizing maybe our conversation today, we talked a lot about the modernization, foundation, AI readiness, operational excellence. How do you see data platforms evolve in the next 12 to 36 months, especially as we need to support heavier AI workloads, faster iterations to the last point?
I truly believe the data platforms are going to evolve in a way where because they're learning about the challenges their users are facing in order to get the maximum usage of their platforms, AI being one of them. My assumption here is that they're going to add those capabilities as part of their platform. So I'll give you an example. Let's say platform X, product X, it's fantastic, but it really needs your data to be clean and it needs it to be structured in a certain way. I believe they're going to start adding these plugins whereby it'll probably say, you know what, give me a view on your catalog and we'll generate a semantic layer for you, right? That's where I think these platforms are going to be going. They're going to be using AI in order to allow, in order to make you AI ready in a way. And I think the platforms that'll do a better job will be the platforms that decouple. In other words, give you the ability to just use that part of their product as a quick way in and then use the full suite. That's where I think that the platforms are going to be going. That plus the analytical engineering platforms, they're starting to grow, right? Or agentic analytics platforms is what I'm getting at, with the knowledge graphs and stuff like that. I think what they're going to ask you to provide is going to change. I think they're going to start asking you to provide your knowledge, your operational expertise, because with that, they'll be able to understand the why of your organization, and then they'll probably try to use AI to map that out for you, as like a turnkey out of the box solution. It may sound a bit crazy, but I've been watching this space for quite a few years, and I know I'm showing my age, but that's how I see these platforms evolving.
Thanks. Appreciate the perspective here. So we're wrapping up on time. Before we wrap, if the audience or people want to follow you along and follow your work, hear you out in events, maybe see what you're doing at Vanguard, what's the best place for them to go?
Well, I don't post too much, but I'm on LinkedIn, right? So just look me up by my name, Ime Akpan. Yeah, that's the best place to follow me. I do speak at a lot of events. I'll be at quite a few events this year as well. So absolutely,
Can you share any
I
of
love talk.
the next couple?
There's a big one. So I think it's the London AI Summit in October. That's a massive one. I'll be there. I think that's the main that I'll call out right now because it's huge. I think last time around, each day they had over like 3,000 attendees, and all the big players were there. So I'll be there for that one. So I'll be looking forward to speaking data to anyone and anyone who's interested.
Amazing. Definitely worth a visit, attendance, and listen.
Oh yeah.
Ime, it's been very fun. Appreciate the conversation today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you, Roy.
Cheers.
Take
Bye-bye.
care now.